Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise today to speak about the Military Pay Act of 2011. We have been on the brink of closing down government earlier this year, this spring, and we came to a responsible conclusion and continued our government, and we were also able to continue the tax cuts that have helped spur our economy as best it could in light of the spending and the debt that has been accumulated. Now we are looking at yet another potential government shutdown. Now, Madam President, it is so important that we take the priorities. We know what's happening right now in Washington. Everyone is focused on whether there is going to be an agreement to lift the debt ceiling, because if there isn't, then we are going to have a situation in which there is a potential for default depending on the decisions for what gets paid first. We do have revenue coming in that can be spent even if the debt ceiling is not lifted. However, the President can choose the priorities. What I am asking that we do today is set some of those priorities. What I am asking is that we take our military personnel out of any limbo. So let's go back to what we did earlier this year when we were in the continuing resolution debate, which also had the potential for shutting down government. When that happened in April, I joined with my colleague on the House side, Representative Louis Gohmert. We both introduced a bill, the Ensuring Pay for Our Military Act, Senate Bill 724. We got 80 co-sponsors of that legislation. 80 out of 100 in the United States Senate stepped up to the plate and said, yes, we need to take care of our military even if government shuts down. That was April. Now, since then, I have introduced a new bill. The new bill is Senate Bill 1365, the Protecting Military Pay Act of 2011. Now, that one sets two priorities. It sets paying our debt, the interest on our debt, and our military. It is those two priorities. Social Security is in a different account, and it will automatically be paid from that account. I actually am co-sponsoring another bill that is also co-sponsored by many senators and many House members that would require that the President pay our debt, interest on our debt, our active duty military, and also Social Security recipients, even though that would automatically happen. The legislation that I introduced in April that would take care of our active duty military is supported by the Military Officers Association of America, the AMVETS, the American Veterans, and the National Military Family Association. The new bill that I've introduced that adds the debt to be paid off along with our military just sets the priorities. And here's what it does. It says that if we have any kind of a government shutdown or we have a situation where we don't lift the debt ceiling and therefore we have to prioritize our spending according to the revenue that is coming in, there are two things that will be done. We want to pass the law so there can be no discretion, that you will pay the debts and you will pay the military. You will pay the active duty military. That is what the bill does, simply and clearly. And here's the situation. If the debt ceiling is reached, $29 billion would be set aside for August for the payment of our debts. $2.9 billion would be added to that for active duty military pay. So you're allocating out of the billions that would be coming in August, you would allocate those as the first two priorities, and Social Security would be paid out of the Social Security Fund. So It is essential, Madam President, and I am going to ask our majority leader to let these bills come up, at least one of them, that says we will pay the debt, we will pay our military, and we know that Social Security will be paid. It is tremendously damaging for our military to be getting the news in Afghanistan and Iraq of all the upheaval in Washington, because they're getting the news, of course. And for them to worry, oh my gosh, what happens August 2nd if my paycheck isn't there for my wife or my husband to be able to use that to pay our mortgage or the basic expenses. I just want to put it in perspective here. We have people in the military with boots on the ground by the thousands that are making under $20,000 a year. Now, those are people who are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have the luxury of having a big savings account with that kind of income, and especially if they've got children, my goodness, they're making under $18,000 a year, some of these younger junior members of the enlisted corps. So I don't think we ought to make them worry for 10 seconds. If they can pay their basic bills for their housing and the food for their families. In my state of Texas, there are 28,000 brave men and women deployed in the support of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. There are more than 97,000 service members deployed who are married and have children waiting for them at home. There are 145,000 troops deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan who are working long hours every day in the desert heat to protect our freedom, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to root out the terrorists that have attacked America. These men and women all raised their right hand and volunteered to go to defend this nation. The very least that we can do while we are in this kind of budget negotiation, which is making a lot of people nervous. I have faith that we're going to do the right thing in the end, but it's not clear yet, and we're a week away. So I don't think that we ought to make these people think about whether it's going to happen and if there's going to be a delay in a paycheck. So I hope that we will be able to bring this bill up. I can guarantee if the majority leader will bring up my bill, it will pass. It has 80 co-sponsors. The new bill is the same thing, except that it just makes the debt payment the priority, which you would hope would not have to be done. But nevertheless, let's assure that our debtors know that we're going to pay the interest on the debt, and our military who are in harm's way right now will not worry about their family having the paycheck that they need. Madam President, we have about a week. All of us had hoped that it wouldn't take this long, but we have our different views. There's no question about it. I am one who believes that we should raise the debt ceiling only with reforms that will assure the markets, not just for the next week or the next 6 months, but for the long term, that not only are we going to pay our debts, but we are going to bring down the cost of government so that we will not have to raise the debt limit again. We must take the reform actions that we can take right now. We can fix Social Security for 75 years with relatively little cuts in increases in Social Security COLAs, and with a trajectory that will put us on an actuarial table for age that has certainly changed since Social Security was passed. Very little change. It wouldn't affect anyone who is in the upper area of going into Social Security. The bill that I've introduced wouldn't affect anyone age 58 and above. Some are 55 and above. So we can do the big things that will show our debtors and the rest of the world that we can live within our means and that our democracy can work to do the things that will make us good, not for the next week, not for the next 6 months, but for our children and grandchildren. That's what we ought to be doing right now, and I have faith that we're going to have to do something temporary for the next few months while we work out the details, but I know if we get together, we can do this. But I surely don't want our military to have to worry about it for 1 week or 3 months or 6 months, because they deserve better. Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Madam President.